Hello, welcome to the self-learning podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start discussion on Unit 11, Participatory Method. Unit 11 brings you to the end of our multidimensional discussion on research methodologies. In some ways, we have undertaken a long route to reach this point, where research becomes an all-pervasive activity to include you and me in the process of understanding the social reality. You may not be fully agree with the approach and general tenor of Book 1. All the same, you would find that you got a chance to be familiar with the main currents of methodological debates in the social sciences. While reading Book 2 and Book 3, you may like to refer back to some of the units in Book 1. Unit 11 will also be one of those units you would like to come back to, mainly because the participatory approach has put forward a critique of value-neutral research and has argued for the inclusion of the researched in the process of inquiry into the social world. It is easier for you to relate to the approach. Let us see what is participatory approach. Now the point is relationship between common sense interrogating ideological location. We have already seen in our discussion on the comparative approach why and how it is important to make a distinction between common sense and sociological approach. Indeed, a fundamental point that marked the beginning of a social science of society was a self-conscious break with the common sense perception of reality. The taken for granted reality was not considered a valid starting point. To use an analogy from the natural science, it meant that even if people perceived that the sun did set in the west and rose in the east, science could ably demonstrate that the sun did not move and earth did. This is so despite the solid fixity of the lived experience of being in the earth. To recapitulate Emile Durkheim's The Rules of Sociological Method, that social facts must be treated as things is a blunt affirmation that social phenomena belong to the realm of nature. Empirical science has to come to conquer prejudice and illusion in human beings. Ideas about nature before social conduct can be examined scientifically. The latter is an especially difficult accomplishment, for prejudice and illusion are actually part of our social life. To regard social facts as things is to perform the act of detachment, necessary to recognize that the society has an objective existence, independent of any particular one of us. Hence, it can be studied by methods of objective observation. For long, the idea that it was actually possible to observe and study reality from the outside and from a location that was nowhere and everywhere persisted. Even though the Marxist approach at one end and the phenomenological view at the another challenged such an idea of neutrality, the feminist approach made a more recent serious theoretical challenge to this idea. From another position, the participatory approach has also raised this issue. Before we move on to detailing both historical context of the participatory approach and its main features, I would like to draw attention to another similarity between the implications of a feminist and a participatory approach. This is the entire issue of disciplinary boundaries and their sanctity. It is widely recognized today that a relationship exists between disciplining knowledge and the rise of academic disciplines as we know it today. We also know that a particularly theoretical approach believes that we can draw clear domains of research, thereby break social reality into different parts like economics, the political, the sociological, to be studied by different disciplines. Such a compartmentalized approach assumes that the theoretical tools developed by the disciplines are neutral and scientific. Using them or doing normal science in such a case is adequate, without questioning the paradigms provided for. Both the feminist and the participatory approaches have questioned this. It is not just that there are suggestions for applying new techniques of research, but the very epistemological basis of research has been opened up to reformulation. It may be a useful exercise at this point to delve on how the feminist and participatory approaches move on similar paths. They both question the notion that the traditional social research was indeed value-free, universal and objective. They believe that the term universal standpoint in a caste, class, race, gender divided world cannot be universal. In other words, the dominant view of society is represented as the universal viewpoint. They question the objective approach advocated by the mainstream scholarship. They pose a challenge to the conventional disciplinary boundaries and advocate an interdisciplinary approach to conventional academic scholarship. They promote the idea of an active engagement with a cause in society. For instance, the feminist approach broadly would seek to incorporate gender analysis pursuant to the findings that must be what was practiced as value neutral and objective knowledge was actually male centered. Similarly, the participatory approach too would agree that the voices and the views of the marginal groups, whether based on class or caste or gender, were not adequately taken note of. Hence, an active attempt methodologically has to be undertaken to redress this. From the above description of similarities between the feminist and the participatory approaches, you can easily make out that while applying the approaches we can gainfully use academic research for social change. You can see this expressed in an avowed close link between the feminist theory and the feminist movement, or in professing a self-conscious commitment to gender equality when researching. They believe in recognizing diversity not just in society but also in the construction of social knowledge. Having looked at the similarities between the feminist and the participatory approaches to social research, let us now turn to the historical context within which the participatory method emerged. Now let us wind up the session and take rest. Thank you very much for engaging yourself with a self-learning podcast.